So Jimmy Butler and the Heat looking to punch their ticket as he squared up with Jason Tatum and the Celtics. Miami, the setup on this kind of obvious if you pay attention here. Miami up 3-1, a chance to close it out. Did you watch? Were you tuned in? No? You had other things going on? I understand. You got stuff going on in your life. So Jason Tatum was not the leading scorer for Boston, but he did have 21 points, 11 assists, and 8 rebounds. And the Celtics eviscerated the Heat. The final score not indicative, as the competitive nature of the game was a rout or root, depending on where you grew up and how your teachers taught you when you were a child. So the Heat win, the Celtics rather beat the Heat 110-97. So we get to use the term that we only use in sports, the Celtics staving off elimination. So they staved off the elimination. They had 4 Celtics starters score 20 or more points. Miami got boat raced by the Celtics, the old Harvard boat race, led by as many as 24. Boston did. Game 6 will be back in South Florida. It is on like Donkey Kong on Saturday night. The better story, though, for us is in the losing locker room, so that is where we are going to start. And we have our laser bullseye locked in on what the heck happened here to Miami. They were running roughshod over the Celtics, and now all of a sudden here, it's 2 games to go, and the Heat still have to win 1. So let us discuss the question: who gets the stone crab of blame, the largest portion of the stone crab of blame?
Who goofed? I've got to know.
Exactly, for the Heat. So I've got DC Comics, Boy George, and Penitentiary. And we will tie all of these things together, and we'll see what sticks in our stomach is what we're going to see. So, the answer to this is the same answer it was after the last game for Miami. The Butler did it. In this case, the Butler didn't do it. You start with Jimmy Butler, and that's at the very top of the topic tree, and then you work your way to all the different branches. But he's the spirit animal for the Heat, the pace car for Miami basketball, and you would have been better off. If you saw the beginning of this game, you didn't really need to watch anything after halftime, and really the end of the first quarter. But if you saw the game, you know what I'm talking about here. The Heat would have been better off early in that game with Alfred Pennyworth, that he would have been better from DC Comics, Alfred the Butler, as Alfred the Butler would have been more efficient on both sides of the ball. Batman's buddy there. Jimmy, we like him. We're a fan of his, but he was a step slow. And not every game is going to be your masterpiece. He did not assert his will early in that game. That is a nice way of saying he sucked at a time you cannot suck. Butler started the game 1 of 5 from the floor, but it wasn't even so much the offense. It was a result of the lack of defense that was also a problem. As a result, the Heat ended up playing uphill the entire day. How did that go? Stuck behind the 8 ball. Now, we also give a large chunk of the stone crabs of blame to Bam Adebayo. Bam! And Bam Bam. He is the second option, second most talented player, I am told by those that are smarter than me, on the Miami Heat roster. And Bam went bust. And again, I go back to the early part of the game because the game was decided early. It wasn't decided late. It was decided early. And Adebayo had not 1, not 2, but 3 turnovers. He didn't even play the entire first quarter. Boston outscored Miami 10-0 on points off turnovers. Kyle Lowry had a bunch of turnovers also. And all of that helped jumpstart the Celtics getting out to a 15-point lead. They were knocking down 3-point shots wide open, and they never looked back. So the second part of this, what went wrong from a team perspective for the Heat? So Miami, you always kind of knew what you were going to get. That's been the MO on the Heat. They're not going to overwhelm you. They're not the most talented team in the world, but you're going to get the same effort every game. There's a level of consistency with Miami. They play lockdown defense. That was not there. Boston was getting open looks. That defense was so bad for Miami. I thought the Lakers were out there playing with all the open looks the Celtics were getting. And what happened to that Doberman defense? There was no Doberman defense. With hands in face and bodies on body, there was none of that early in the game. Celtics made almost 60% of their three-point shots in the first quarter. I'm surprised they didn't shoot higher than that because they were all wide open. Made 7 of the 12. That's 58% from downtown. And Miami was unraveling. In the first half, the Celtics taking advantage of that shoddy defense from Miami. They outscored the Heat 33-12 from three-point range in the first half, 13-0 in second chance points, and 17-9 in points off turnover. That's called checkmate. And I thought of an old musician from the previous generation, the 80s there, Boy George, and Culture Club, right? The Church of the Poison Mind. There were a lot of poison minds with Miami there. And now, is it just me, or do you not hear about the Heat culture? I say that in air quotes. Heat culture when they toss out a clunker. Will anyone at all, any of the bloggers, any of the prominent NBA media types write a bleeding heart blog post about the Heat culture and how it's real? We don't hear about that when they go out and play like they did in the game on Thursday night. Only in victory do the basketball media slobber you-know-whats, only in victory do they go all out about the Heat culture. There's nothing to brag about here when you're cracked, torn, scratched, and deformed, which is what happened. And you give some credit to Boston, but I believe the story here is Miami. That is the story. And I understand it's a rigged game, and I'm not saying there was any funny business here. I just thought Miami came out flat in this game, but the NBA definitely has a Cheshire Cat smile from ear to ear, because they needed a Game 6, and they would also like to have a Game 7. Why? To fill the gap. They've got a cavity, and they got to fill the cavity. The finals do not start until Thursday, June 1st. So we still got almost a full week to go, this being Friday, our Friday show. So you got to get to Thursday, June 1st. The reason they start the finals on that date, no matter what, I was told by some big honky honk at the NBA, the honky tonk man for the NBA, that is because so many international media from all over Europe and Asia and random countries in between traveled to the States, and they want to cover the finals, so it's very expensive to fly from overseas, as you know, and they have that as a courtesy, and they also like to pump their chest out and brag about how they're the global game and all that. But you need content. You need content. You need games to keep the masses engaged before the main event, which is Denver versus somebody else. And we know one of the two teams in the Eastern Finals will play. But anyway, that's the story there. Now, the last word. Time to update the Maller scale of panic. How much trouble are the Heat in after they went out and took a ride on the Vomit Comet in Game 5 against the Celtics? So the Maller scale of panic, 1 to 10, with 10 being inbound to Cancun. Last time we did this, after the previous game, we were at a 4.5, which was mildly distressing for the Heat on the Maller scale of panic. But we're going to crank up the Maller scale of panic again, 1 to 10, and big money, no whammy, stop. And the Maller scale of panic, which is never wrong, is now up to a 7. So we went from a 4.5 to a 7, which is very intense. Now, that said, I still expect Miami to win. Yes, I absolutely do. And we are not living in a penitentiary, meaning, sorry, not sorry. We're not prisoners of the moment. Maybe you're a prisoner of the moment. I understand a lot of how this works. And one of the reasons the gambling world makes so much money is because the low information fan, the idiot in the media, they react to what they just saw. Prisoner of the moment. And they think that's going to continue. The reactionary media gets whiplash as they jump off the Heat bandwagon, thinking it's going to crash into a wall, and jump on the Celtics wagon. And they're like, oh, the Heat are over now. But we know that momentum does not exist. If it did, the Heat would have swept the Celtics. They'd won the first 2 games, dominating. Right? Now, every game is its own entity. Every game is its own standalone entity. Every quarter is its own standalone entity. And I keep going back to whoever plays better in the moment. The Heat will rebound in South Florida. And if not, they still have Game 7 in their back pocket. That's why I can't go higher than a 7 on the Maller scale of panic. The pressure remains on Boston. I know that Charles Barkley and some of these other guys are like, it's all on the Heat now. Wrong. That's a bad take. It doesn't change. The Celtics are not out of the woods yet. They are prohibitive favorites before the series. They have been inconsistent, which is being kind. They have shown up in spurts. A lot of peaks and a lot of valleys for the Celtics. And the Heat, they just have to play one good game. The Celtics have to play 2 more good games. Now, they've been able to play 2 in a row. And that's great. But it's not like the Heat can't win in Boston. They already did win the first 2 games in that gymnasium. So the Celtics have no margin for error still. The Heat simply have to play well for one of the next 2 games, and they will be eating nuggets. But not chicken nuggets. Denver nuggets is what they will be eating.